How's it going, guys, and welcome back to BL3'S Forgotten, the series where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the Narp. If you'd like to farm the Narp for yourself, you're going to want to fast travel over to Ashfall Peaks on Gehenna, specifically taking the Caldera Stronghold fast travel station. From there we're going to cross into the other side of the bathhouse where you can hit the save station, as this is where we are going to be resetting from. From there, run back out into the main section of the bathhouse, taking a right and heading over to these elevator sections where you can use a jump pad to get up to where you can fight Hayden Marr. Kill him and you can get yourself a Narp. The Narp is a legendary Hyperion sniper rifle, which is able to roll in any of the elements. Every time you reload the Narp, a buff is added to the next magazine. This buff is 20% weapon damage, which stacks with the more bullets that you had left in the old magazine, capping out at 10 for 200% weapon damage. Along with that, you also get an increase to fire rate and an increase to accuracy and handling. The Narp has had one direct buff, gaining a 20% increase to its mag size, but it also got the overall sniper buff of 20% damage. So I'm going to rant in this video about Hyperion snipers just overall, but before I do that, we're going to talk about the Narp itself. The damage of the Narp was actually quite the surprise, and it far exceeded what I expected the Narp's usability to actually be, especially considering how unpopular this gun is. I'm happy to say that this is definitely my new favorite Hyperion sniper rifle. However, that being said, it still doesn't feel very snipery. Against tankier enemies, the gameplay is still just spamming shots into an enemy similar to almost every other Hyperion sniper. And again, while the damage is good, the damage just isn't that of what a fucking sniper should be. The most fun that I did have with the Narp was on my Crit Mose build, as this made it the easiest to stack Overkill, and once Overkill was stacking, then it would get that satisfying one-shot damage. But that's not the gun itself. Any Jacob sniper can do this, and any Jacob sniper can do this far easier. Most Jacob snipers can one-shot before you even start stacking Overkill. Without Overkill, it was a 3-shot on a majority of targets, which isn't bad, but again, it's just not what I want out of a Hyperion sniper. The reload buff, however, is very important, and you do need to pay attention to your reloads to make sure that you are always reloading before you dip below 10. However, if you do reload before you dip below 10, you can also just reload, and the penalty is literally just another reload. So while the buff is important, it's not that hard to play around. Especially, again, if you're playing Mose, because this buff persists forever. I did test this, and I waited around for quite some time, and the buff stays until you reload. On top of Mose just having a huge synergy with weapon damage, as most of her builds don't spec too heavily into weapon damage, while snipers are usually off meta with her, I do think that she is able to get the absolute most out of this, mostly just because she doesn't have to worry about reloading it and losing that buff. Now, versus the absolute trashiest of trash mobs, it almost hits the mark, but you still pretty much need to have a little bit of overkill for it to be feeling good. Even against troopers on Athenas, it was sometimes still a 2-shot. Granted, it was just barely a 2-shot, but it was still a 2-shot, which, I don't know, double tapping with a Hyperion sniper still just doesn't feel right to me. That's dull. That's Doll's thing. And speaking of that, let's talk about why I don't like Hyperion snipers, despite loving the idea of Hyperion snipers. I do not agree with their current identity, or, well, lack thereof. Across every Borderlands game, my favorite Hyperion sniper is the Morningstar, due to it getting stronger and rewarding you for continuing to play well with it. For those unaware, of course, the Morningstar is a Hyperion sniper from BL2 that will stack critical hit damage with each critical hit. Now, while it was kind of weak to start off with, it still did have actually pretty good base damage. The more crits you were hitting, eventually you'd just start one-tapping anything that you shot it at. Again, as long as you were getting a crit. This had a really satisfying feeling of having that kind of like power-up fantasy that Hyperion sort of has with the reverse recoil, but actually taking that and applying it to something that actually works for a sniper rifle. It's clear that this is sort of what Gearbox also has in mind between the Narp and the Tankman Shield, both having these effects which are reliant on either getting kills or playing around some sort of pattern and just using the gun how it's supposed to be used, having specific rules for how this gun should function and rewarding you based on that. The problem is, even when you're doing that, neither of these are that fucking good, and you still just have to spam shots into things to actually kill them. I love the idea, the Narp rewarding you for paying attention to your ammo count and killing enemies with only the necessary amount of shots. The problem is, with a base magazine size of 17 with the best roll, without overkill, you're realistically only going to be killing 2 2 to maybe 3 enemies. Every other manufacturer has a clear identity. Jacobs is just massive raw damage, Vladov is lower damage but high fire rate, Dahl is all about those tactics and swapping your firing mode for the given situation, and Hyperion is nothing but a couple of gimmicks that really don't do much for snipers. To fix not only the Narp, but all Hyperion snipers, I would simply want to give them an actual identity. Maybe lower their base damages a bit, but increase the fuck out of critical hit damages. Make them feel like those premium snipers that they are, and reward proper accuracy instead of rewarding sustained fire with just more accuracy. That's fucking dumb for a sniper. And what could be done for the Narp is that make it so that instead of accuracy and fire rate, which isn't really needed again for what a sniper should be, either just give it even more weapon damage, give it a mix of weapon and crit, or just give it a shit ton of crit. The Narp is genuinely a good weapon, and I actually did have a very good time using it. I just think that it misses the mark of actual satisfaction, and I can't be the only one who feels this, seeing as this is generally a pretty unpopular weapon. It's definitely my new favorite of the Hyperion snipers, but that simply comes down to the fact that the damage is probably the best out of them, and it has the ability, just being a single shot, to stack overkill pretty damn good and keep that stack up. The gun itself, though, like every other Hyperion sniper, is close to being great, but just isn't quite there. That's gonna about do it for this one, though. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that. Down in the description will be a link to my Twitch channel, where I'll be live right after this video goes up, and below that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.